Welcome to ApexThis podcast, a podcast about podcasting, or rather, a chronicle of my journey to start a publishing side business. This will be a behind-the-scenes look at what I'm doing to make that happen. I'll share tips and best practices that I learn along the way. These tips and best practices will be something that you can use to start your very own podcast and share your voice with the world. Coming up in this episode, the future of podcasting. In my journey to start a publishing company, there is a lot I must learn, and in learning, there is a lot that I must read. And so I figured that I would share this as well. Interesting things that I find to be cool, engaging, and helpful. News from the podcasting world, if you are so inclined. First up, a discussion about podcast discoverability on Download This Show.
Keep the number. All right, searchability for you. What's missing for searchability for podcasts for you, Seamus?
Look, I had a quick play with audio search as well, and I think the problem I spotted with it was it seems to actually still, and in that sort of classic Google sense, it's still giving too much weight in that search to what's the podcast named itself and what's the tag written as the title of that particular episode, because I think Olivia's exactly right. Being able to search inside what has been said inside an episode would be great, but I noticed any sort of keyword I could think of to test out, the 20 results I saw were essentially episodes of a podcast that had that word in its name. And I think on exactly that
One thing that stood out to me in their discussion was search, and how searching for a keyword in most podcast directories retrieves shows with that keyword in the show title. Despite technological limitations, this made me think about how I have tried to make my podcast discoverable. How have others tried to make their podcast discoverable? You have social media that you disperse your podcast to, and you have forums and blogs. Releasing to social media is easy. You manage the timing to post, and you tag your show to allow others to pull it up in their search results. You can even interest more people with a behind-the-scenes look at what you're doing. That could pull in people to start following your social accounts, and eventually, you can make a listener out of them. But it's all about being social and interacting with those that follow you, those that are discussing the same topic, and those that do the same as you. What about show notes and transcripts? A readily available body of text for the web. Finding podcasts are incredibly difficult. For starters, not a lot of podcast directories such as iTunes allow you to search beyond the show name and/or title. But just beneath that surface is a treasure trove of data. Your show notes and your show transcript, if you have them. There are many benefits to having show notes and especially a transcript, but the primary reason here is to be found. Think about it. When you're looking for podcasts, you go to iTunes and search for a podcast. Are you searching for text? Are you scrolling through the new and noteworthy list or the multitude of subcategories to find that business-related podcast? Even though technology can only give us the popular podcasts for each category, we are still missing out on much more. So we turn to Google, searching for keywords that hopefully hit your podcast, your show notes, your transcript. And we turn to our friends, to forums, and to blogs we visit to see what people recommend because we can't quite find what we need. I'm looking forward to seeing how podcast discovery and sharing can be improved and allow smaller podcasts to shine. Until then, share what you like, Tweet your favorite episode and keep the word of mouth going for your favorite podcast. Next up, the future of audio editing.
Hello, everyone. You guys have been making weird stuff online with photo editing. Well, we'll do the next thing today. Let's do something to human speech, like changing what you have said in your wedding.
At Adobe Max 2016, Adobe demoed Photoshop for your voice called Voco. This isn't just any editor. After recording 20 minutes of your voice, you can edit the generated transcript of your audio, and it will stitch together your sentences or any new words you add, and generate the audio of your voice. Crazy, right? I'm going to play a few clips from the audio. Zayu is demoing the software and is using the recorded voice of Michael while Jordan Peele watches on stage.
I jumped out of the bed and I kissed my dogs and my wife in that order.
Zayu edits the text to change the order of who Jordan kisses first.
And
I kissed my wife and my dogs. Whoa.
Now, Zayu replaces a word and the audio is regenerated using Michael's voice. Who Jordan kisses changes entirely.
And here we go.
And I kissed Jordan and my dogs.
At this point in the video, Jordan gets up and walks across the stage in disbelief. It doesn't stop there. Zayu continues to edit the text, adding new phrases. And when playing it back, it sounds just like him.
And playback.
And I kissed Jordan 3 times.
If you edit and produce podcasts or audiobooks, can you imagine what you can do with that? Maybe your story isn't coming together and you decide you want to change the wording, sentence structure, or add something new altogether. If you are working with others, you have to get everyone back in the studio to re-record and perform different takes. But if you could simply edit the text, that takes your editing to a whole new level. Of course, that could also bring about on a host of ethical problems. Imagine taking 20 to 30 minutes of someone's audio, throwing it into Adobe so that it can learn and analyze their voice, and then tweaking and changing what they say. You can get into some serious trouble with this, but Adobe says that they have already thought of that. They will have watermark data to show that the audio has been changed to mitigate he said, she said controversy. Even so, Voco will change the landscape of audio editing, and I can't wait. How can we solve podcasting's diversity problem? That's the question asked in an article from the New Statesman. Charlie Locke, a writer from Wired, wondered this as well. She went on to write about the profile of a podcast listener and how even now it is considered to be in its infancy. The profile of a listener is mostly male, young, and has a higher income. This profile is then catered to and becomes a cycle of the show mirroring its listeners and the listeners mirroring the show. This ultimately leaves little for diversity. Based on this article, sociologist Josh Morgan conducted research into US-based podcasts to determine the ethnicity of the podcast host. Through his research, Josh found that 85% of US-based podcasts had at least one white host, with 18% as non-white. Josh deposited that This may not entirely be bad as it follows closely to other forms of media. But just like other forms of media, the audience will be catered to by advertisers and more podcasts will be created that caters to that audience. And that may possibly make the 18% shrink. If I am trying to start a publishing company, then I need to network. Outside of the local podcasters meetup, I've looked around in search of other podcasting events, and in perfect timing, I received an email from my podcast host, PowerPress. First on the list is Podcast Multimedia Expo from February 23rd through 25th in Orlando. A little bit late to attend now, but hey, now you know for next year. Then there is the Mid-Atlantic Podcast Conference in Philadelphia. That event will be held September 8th through the 9th. Next is the Los Angeles Podcast, which has yet to announce dates at the time of this recording. Another is the Audio Publishers Association on May 31st in New York. For this conference, I am unsure if this is open to all, but it may be likely that you have to be a member of the association to attend. Last but not least is Podcast Movement. This event will be on August 23rd through 25th in Anaheim, California, and it is this event that I decided to attend. The number one reason was the date of the event. Give some time to save for flight and hotel. It was this event that I've heard the most talk about, and so I figured, why not? Their panels for 2016 looked good and had a strong attendance. The power of networking is strong. Meeting others and sharing ideas can benefit both, and you might just find your podcasting BFF. As more and more pour into podcasting, I can see events like these continuing to grow to foster relationships from podcasters that may never likely meet or hear of one another. If you are able to attend one of the big events for 2017, go for it. If not, I highly recommend checking out a local podcasting meetup in your city. If there isn't one, start one. So, what do you think is in the future of podcasting? Is it new technology that advances the sharing and discovery of podcasts? Or the advancement of audio editing and production? Could it be the diversification of podcasts that gives us a variety of content and voices? Or will the future of podcasting be the person you're awkwardly sitting next to at a conference or meetup? Whatever it is, I've been on this train for over a decade, and I can't wait to see where we go from here. That's it for this episode. I hope that you liked it. I've certainly enjoyed putting this episode together, and I plan to have many more news-focused episodes of stories that have resonated with me and to include interesting news, stories, and recommendations in future episode segments. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Google Play Music, or your favorite podcast app. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ApexThis. Be sure to check out ApexThis.com for show notes about everything that I talked about. And with that, until next time.